What if I was to tell you that the biggest edge on DraftKings and FanDuel is painfully clear? And it's something only about 5% of people do on a regular basis. Easily the most overlooked source of positive expected value in all of DFS. Coming close. Late. We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by Underdog Fantasy. Okay, I was having a little fun with you guys. Let's say it now. Late swap. It's been a big part of my game for years, especially in NFL. So if it's something that you haven't been doing a ton of, it can impact your bottom line significantly at the end of the season. It's a strategy that I feel is criminally underutilized on DraftKings and FanDuel, at least in today's meta. So I'm going to give you 5 reasons why you should be late swapping. And then I also want this video to be super actionable today. So I'm going to give you 4 specific situations at the end of the video where you should be considering late swapping that maybe you haven't thought about before. But before we get to the why and the when, would love to thank the sponsor of this video, runthesims.com, a premium fantasy tool site for season-long DFS and prop betting. A new spin on fantasy sports and DFS tools where we're leaning on 10,000 simulations for each game as the primary value driver. And as many of you know, I was so impressed with what they were building. Run the Sims is now the official tools partner of the Joe Holka Show, the exact optimizer and data that I'll be using to construct my own DraftKings and FanDuel lineups all season long. We talk about it a lot around here, but anytime you can find a system that simplifies everything into one easy to use product, that's going to be incredibly valuable for every level of player. So if you'd like to make the smart move like many of the community have already done, feel free to use the link in the description below and join us in leveraging the next frontier of lineup optimizers and simulation tools, which, by the way, that link does support the channel, so thank you. And if you'd like to save $50 off on your NFL season bundle, be sure and use code HOLKA at checkout. I'm also giving away 4 signed NFL jerseys at the end of the month. Absolutely free to join if you register with Pristine Auction with, you guessed it, code HOLKA, or use the link in the pinned comment of this video. I don't ask a lot of you guys, but it takes less than 30 seconds to enter, so don't miss out. We'll be doing the drawing live on stream September 1st. Would love to see one of you guys watching this video right here take one of these home. And if we impress Pristine Auction, who knows, maybe we even give away a bunch more stuff during the NFL season. Wouldn't that be awesome? All right, let's do this. Let's get right into the why. Why do we late swap? The first reason is you have more information. Think about this. It's never going to feel completely comfortable when you make this decision because you spent all week, even all Sunday morning, constructing these lineups or doing the research that it takes to get there. But now think about it this way. You have 3 additional hours of context leading into these afternoon games. How is the chalk doing? How are my teams doing? How accurate were you with ownership? Things like that. It's crazy. Most people just don't want to take advantage of that opportunity to basically just redo their lineup with all this added information that you would never have before the slate starts. The second reason to late swap is just to capitalize on people's laziness. It's maybe not even laziness at this point. Maybe it's an even worse reason. Maybe it's something like anchoring bias. Like these people don't want to move away from the teams that they've built because they spent so much time on them, or because they like specific players, or because they think they know a lot more than they actually do, or they just have a fear of missing out. Maybe they're pretty close to cashing and they just think that their team can quite get them there and they just survive in advance. That's not what we're doing here. This one might be even worse though. Maybe they have denial of where their lineup ceiling is completely. Maybe they're kind of in the middle of the pack. They have some chalky players. They're not quite at the top. They think that their lineup might be good enough to get into that top 3, when in reality, there's a bunch of chalky players coming next that are just going to pass them in the afternoon. So at that point, you really do need to kind of get different to stay where you're at, but also to continue moving up in the leaderboard. You never want to hold on for a min cash, guys. That's not what we're doing here. All of the money is up top anyway. We play for first, or what the hell are we even doing here? Reason number 3 to late swap. You want to be using tools that update in real time, but also have very accurate ownership projections. On the free side of things, fantasylabs.com does have an ownership dashboard where you can check ownership percentages across different stakes directly after lock. And again, there's a ton of stuff on Run the Sims where we're going to be able to leverage this information to make better lineup decisions, to make better late swap decisions that I highly recommend. Also, there's an awesome interview on Peter Overzet's YouTube channel where him and Bales dive deep into the subject. Very good conversation. Definitely check out the segment with Sean Newsham there as well. Easily the best I've ever seen with late swap decisions. He's the one that I'm bouncing ideas off of each and every Sunday, even though he'll probably tell you that he always runs bad. Reason number 4 to late swap. Makes a great tiebreaker when you're building lineups. Because if we're honest with ourselves, a lot of people overvalue the accuracy of median projections across the board. Projections that matter much less after lock, by the way. So when you're trying to figure out that last guy in, or maybe how you're going to be stacking up the rest of your lineup, sometimes just making that tiebreaker in favor of the guy that's playing on the afternoon slate is often a really sharp decision, because then you have a lot more information and then you go from there. Reason number 5 to late swap on DraftKings and FanDuel. Hope. Even if you don't deserve it. We've all been here. Guys, it's okay. CMC only scored 50 DraftKings points. He was way too expensive anyway. All we need is 4 touchdowns from Aaron Jones in the afternoon, and we're back, baby. This actually happened to me once, and I've never felt more alive. Okay, so you've committed to late swapping more frequently. Congrats. But when should you do it? If you have to ask, you can't afford it. Just kidding. But that's what I picture Sean saying every time I'm considering a late swap before the afternoon games. Side note, find friends who gets refused to tell you what you want to hear. For me, that's Sean. He tells me I'm wrong all the time. Okay, 4 situations to late swap and increase your ROI on DraftKings. Number 1, you got to give yourself a chance in head-to-heads. If you are playing cash games, there's a larger discussion that we'll have very soon. This one's pretty simple. Make sure you go through your head-to-heads. You have to reverse engineer that salary to see what kind of players they have remaining. Pretty easy to figure it out a lot of times. If you're going to do this, it's definitely a time-consuming endeavor, but worth it before the afternoon game. So start with your highest stake head-to-heads first and do it every slate. This might seem aggressive in cash games. You're playing against one player, but it's possible you're blocked. And if you're blocked, it doesn't matter anyway. You have to give yourself a chance. And what I mean by blocked is you have the same amount of slots left and likely the same player as the guy that you're in the head-to-head with. So you have to swap. Salary no longer matters. Give yourself a chance to pass. Now, if you're completely buried, that's a little bit of a different story. You have a lot of player minutes remaining, but you completely whiffed on some big fades that went off along the way. There's absolutely a little bit of feel here, but more than likely, you probably need to swap. Set it 3 times now. Give yourself a chance to catch up. The second situation that I'm considering late swapping is when I have a chance to elevate myself in a top-heavy payout structure. So that's where all the money's at these days. And just as it's pretty easy to tell if you're blocking head-to-heads, you can tell if there's people above you in the leaderboard that have similar players left remaining. What's the point of just matching them so you can't pass? Try to win. This goes for large field and small field GPPs, by the way. And if you find yourself becoming just content with going 1.5x on your buy-in with the min cash, check yourself. Anything can happen in an afternoon of football that flips the slate completely on its head. What's up, Peter? Not enough people prioritize swaps when it's already going extremely well. This is a strategy we've seen people win the Millionaire Maker with. They're in the top 10 or they're threatening to at least remain in the top 25, but a pivot to a lower owned wide receiver in the afternoon could be the difference between winning 50K and winning $1 million. It's absolutely huge. The third situation that I'm late swapping is going to be when I can leverage ownership with late news. And I'm not talking about news on Sunday morning, even though it's just a fact that the later that something comes out, the fewer casual players will actually make that pivot, but news that's just going to provide the most leverage in late swap. So maybe it's an uncertain injury situation for a guy that's in the 4 p.m. game, a running back that might be unlocked that's going to give you 15 to 20 touches at low salary because he's backup and at low ownership because a lot of people aren't going to wait on that news. So what you can do is you build into your lineup almost like a 2v2 based on either side of the way that news breaks in the afternoon. Does that make sense? The fourth specific time that you should be trying to late swap is when you think you can have a backdoor min cash, maybe just a chance at moving up. It's not you're completely buried, but this happens once or twice a year. Day starts off as a complete disaster. Let's say you have 2 players left, not on the same team. One is the chalk quarterback. The other one is a premium wide receiver 1 who's going to be heavily owned in the afternoon games. You're forced to late swap at that point. You're already dead. So it's an easy decision. Somehow the aforementioned wide receiver 1 that I was talking about has a quarterback less than 10% owned. Maybe he's a little bit more expensive. Someone like Russell Wilson when everyone's on DK Metcalf. Easy pivot. His wide receiver 2, someone like Tyler Lockett. Maybe he's in a tough cornerback matchup that people are avoiding and he somehow fits in your remaining salary. The best part of this is when the lock wide receiver DK Metcalf somehow fails in a better matchup, and then you just min cash that GPP. Those feel good. Okay, I stole this story from Sean. You've heard me mention him 3 times now. Follow him on Twitter. He's at PSUFans2. He plays a lot of high stakes cash games, runs with a lot of high stakes players, but there was basically an obvious optimal lineup that week in DK cash games. How do I put this? Hundreds of thousands of dollars were made in high stakes by players who had the stones to make that same 2v2. That move from DK to Lockett, and I don't remember who it was at quarterback, to Russell Wilson. Not everyone has that much on the line each Sunday, but I do respect the people that are willing to make those plus EV decisions regardless. Want to remind you guys that building slowly is completely fine. Continue to make mistakes, evolve, totally okay. I did the same exact thing. Before you go, would you say that you late swap too much or not enough? Let me know in the comments, all right? Good talk.